theater. I mean, she was right out there with her captors, you know, cheering their cause. That's basically what the. So, do you believe that Aisha suffered from because in that culture it's like you're my wife and that's the end of it?
No, I don't see any substantial evidence for any of that. I mean, I don't see where people are getting this idea that she would be like this, because there's also something else in Islamic law that, you know, she didn't have to accept this marriage. As much as people may believe that she was forced to marry him, that's not the case. She is required by law to give either her approval of it or not. And
do you believe a 6-year-old is capable of making a decision, or is this something that her parents and mom decided for her?
When she was married at 6, she is allowed, before consummation occurs, she is allowed to annul the contract. She is allowed.
Do you believe this is, I mean, especially if she's, because children obey parents, do you believe that this would be a decision a 9-year-old girl is capable of making? Because, I mean, obviously this is the Prophet Muhammad. It's like he's God's messenger, and you want to upset God's messenger. Do you believe that at such a fragile young age she was capable of saying no?
I think that if we were to go back to what I was talking about before in regards to the references that I provided, I think she would have been capable by that age, and especially girls around her age as well, or at least within a certain range. She would have been capable to a particular point. She was never required to marry him. It was actually a suggestion brought up from a friend, and even Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, had basically stated, well, you know, well, she's already engaged to somebody else, so does he really want to do this? You know, so there was kind of some hesitation at first, and then the Prophet Muhammad had to kind of remind him, well, you know, oh yeah, actually his objection to it was, well, we're brothers, and what he was actually referring to was sort of the tribal brothership, but they weren't related by blood. So the Prophet Muhammad said, well, we're not really brothers, we're brothers in Islam. That's it, we're not brothers by blood. And then Abu Bakr was like, okay, that's fine. And then basically what happens, they went through the proper mediums. The man who was going to marry her later on in the future eventually was like, okay, well, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And then they went on with it. And then later on, of course, the formalities when she had reached the appropriate age. But she never, I mean, Stockholm Syndrome, I don't see how one could verify that being the case.
Okay. So, well, people are wanting me to, wrap up the subject. Just to summarize, number one, you're going to be making a video on the subject. So if anybody wants to learn more about it, they can watch your video. But just to summarize, marrying a 6-year-old girl in today's society would be wrong, but it was not wrong in the 5th century when that took place. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So just watch his video. He'll upload it soon. There was somebody that did ask a question about female circumcision. What's the religious deal with that? From my understanding, it is not a Muslim requirement, but rather it is simply a cultural requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true. There's a lot of, I want to mention this too real quick. Okay. There's a lot of cultural things that are done that are called Islam. That is not the case. There are a lot of things that, I mean, this female circumcision, especially the way that it's practiced in those, but that's a horrendous thing, and that would be considered injustice.
Okay. What about male circumcision? Of course, that's a big thing in the Jews and also a lot of Christians. What is male circumcision in the Islam faith?
Male circumcision is never looked down upon, actually.
Is it a common thing for Muslim men to have done to children?
I don't know exactly. I mean, being that they were pagans first, but when they became Muslims, I don't think it was problematic. I think that it was practiced. It has been commonly practiced. I don't know exactly whether or not it's a requirement. I have to look into that, but my understanding, it's never been problematic.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and move on to them, because, like I said, I mean, you've got your questions. I know you want to get into them. Now, this is my final question to you. Then we're going to move on to your questions. Then we're going to move on to the video questions. If Muhammad was God's prophet, is he the last prophet that God will send us? And if so, why?
He is the last prophet. He is the final messenger, yes. There will never be one sent after him. And the message that he brought, basically, somebody looking up Mahdi. The Mahdi is not a messenger. Actually, the Mahdi would be a person that's believed by Sunnis and Shia that he is part of the bloodline of Prophet Muhammad. He's basically going to come at the end times. I just want to explain this real quick. And he's supposed to come to rally the Muslims against the Dajjal, meaning the Antichrist. So we have also an Antichrist thing going on here. And
is the Antichrist Thunderfoot?
Yes. No.
If you saw Frank's video, I don't know, Frank, if you're still in here or not, but he made a funny video about that.
No.
So in Muslim religion, you got your own version of the story of Revelation, correct?
Basically, what happens is the Mahdi, from my understanding, basically he's supposed to be trying to fight the Dajjal during the end times because the Dajjal is going to try to basically destroy the Muslims. And then Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him, is going to come down and basically kill the Antichrist. And then, so the Mahdi is basically a precursor for Isa to come. But going back to Prophet Muhammad, yes, he's the final messenger, he's the seal of the prophets. And why is this important, I guess? Why is this the case? Well, basically, every prophet in Islam, they had a miracle. For instance, in Moses' time, when he was in Egypt, they practiced magic a lot. So his miracle was to have greater magic. Basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him more power to basically show that, he had more power, more magic than the Egyptians did. The snake turning the staff, or turning the sea. And with Prophet Muhammad's message, he was considered the most extraordinary poetry and recitation in the world, because the Arabs were well known for their poetry. And his particular miracle was this message, this vocal message, which could be preserved and then given to everyone for future generations. So, and I hope that answered your question to some extent.
I did promise that that'd be the last of the question, but I actually just remembered one that I actually did forget to write down. In your death threat to Thunderfoot, you referred to the the true interpretation of the Sharia law. Now, when people like me hear the word Sharia law, we think of people cutting off people's hands, mass executions. This is what Sharia law means to people like me. What is Sharia law? What is the misinterpretation of Sharia law? And what is the true interpretation of Sharia law?
Wow, this is going to be a big answer.
But I promise that's my last question.
Okay. Sharia means the way, or the way to the... It's basically, it's an all-encompassing law that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down. Now, the true interpretation of Sharia is one that can be given to all people of all times. Now, the problem with Sharia today in many places around the world is that it's being interpreted basically from the point of view of the 7th and 8th century. Now, this is a lot to explain, but okay, the first major schools of thought of law in what we call fiqh, in Islamic law, that we call them madhabs, and it was Imam Hanifa, it was Malik, Shafi, and Hanbali. Okay, so those are the four major schools of Islamic law, or Islamic thought. I subscribe to the Maliki school. Of course, I take a reformist position. Now, what these people were doing was that they were basically looking at the Quran, trying to figure out what, at their point in time, basically what the higher objective of it was, how the law should be interpreted, how the law should be applied